Okay, thank you, Julie. Hello, everybody, and we are here for the a new day of Embodiment Conference, Russia. And today, I'm here, Kim, and Julie is helping us with the technical solutions. And this is a session about experiential anatomy from Leila Stuart. And a few words about Leila. She is a massage therapist and yoga therapist who has practiced and taught yoga for over 40 years. She's author of Pathways to a Centered Body and teaches yoga therapy internationally. She loves teaching experiential anatomy, movement repatterning, and somatic practices as a pathway to embodiment. Leila specializes in transforming intellectual information into somatic intelligence and life-changing experience. Yes, and here it goes to you, Leila.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I wish that I spoke Russian. That introduction sounds so dry. And what I hope to do today is to introduce you to the whole field of experiential anatomy as one pathway to embodiment. And it's a path that has been very meaningful for me because although we're all born embodied, as we know, somehow that's lived out of us or socialized out of us. And so for me, I wasn't born a very grounded person or a very centered person. And so my whole experience with movement, with yoga, with body work has been a pathway, my own pathway to become aware of my fullness and to live from my fullness and not so much from my edges or from my conditioning. So experiential anatomy is just that. And I have been very lucky in my life to have every single teacher that I've ever studied with has been of the mind-body unity persuasion. So whether it was dance or whether it was massage therapy or whether it was yoga, I've been steeped in this whole understanding. And so it's strange to me to be part of discussion on Facebook and in other venues that to be embodied and to be in your body is somehow a new great thing when it's our birthright. It's what we were born with, and our pathway to embodiment, whatever it is a pathway to sort of uncover those societal and cultural and familial blockages to being in and to living from our place of wholeness and our inner fullness. So it is an experiential anatomy session, and so I want to give you lots of time to actually have that experience. And so I've chosen today, the topic was something about breathing into life with experiential anatomy. And so I've chosen the respiratory system as an example of how we can use experiential anatomy to become more embodied. So before I actually go into my talk, which will be about probably 15 minutes, and then we'll have the rest of the time for an experience. I'd like to set a baseline with you. So you probably know how to do this. You close your eyes, you go in, and you feel what's going on inside of you. So if you're willing to do that with me, that would be great. And if you're not comfortable with closing your eyes, then just lower your eyes. So if you're comfortable, please close your eyes. And get a sense of yourself in whatever position you're in, sitting in a chair, lying on a couch, but whatever surface you're on, get a sense of all of the parts of your body that touch that surface. So if you're in a chair, it might be your sitting bones and your buttocks and the back of your thighs. Your back might be touching the back of the chair. And also getting a sense, if you're sitting in a chair, for the floor, for the interface, the space between your feet and the floor. And take your awareness now inside, into your inner space. And allow your attention to turn to your breath. And this is a baseline, setting a baseline. So we want to know where you're at in this moment, on this day, in this time, with whatever is going on in your life. And so just getting a sense of what is your breath now? Without changing it, without judging it, without trying to make it anything different. What is the quality of the air coming in and the air coming out? What is the quality of how your body receives that air and how it moves that air out? And where do you feel your breath? If you put one hand onto your belly and the other hand on your chest, and feel your body underneath your hands, what's moving? And if you put your hands on the back of your pelvis, is that moving? And noticing the depth of your breath. How much does it go in? How far down does it go? And noticing also the length of the inhalation and the length of the exhalation. Is one longer than the other? And then are there any pauses in your breath? Is there a pause at the end of the inhalation? Is there a pause at the end of the exhalation? And what's the quality of your breath? Is it smooth? Is it light? Is it deep? Is it a bit choppy? If you had to put a word to the quality of your breath, or a couple of words, what would those words be? Is it labored? Is it easy? And then lastly, we're going to use the breath as a metaphor for life, for how much we permit life, or how much we resist life. So if you could bring to mind a situation in your life that you feel some resistance to, that you're not happy with, that you want to change, that you're having some difficulty being with. And as you bring that situation up, just get a sense of maybe what happens to your breath, what happens in the rest of your body. And just file all of this sensory information away, and we'll come back to it at the end of the session. So when you feel ready, slowly opening your eyes and starting to take in the environment around you and your computer or your phone screen and me again. So sometimes when we're in resistance to something in our life, a tension is created in our body, and that often makes our breath less, because we're one of my teachers of my movement teacher says that all tension is either over efforting or resistance. So if there's tension in our body, then our breath is going to be affected. So we just want to know that, and then at the end we'll see what happens. So if you could bring up have they seen already the title slide? I guess they don't really need to, right? Because they know who I am. Let's go to that's a person who's in their body. Okay, so the next slide, what is experiential anatomy, or why experiential anatomy? So when I first learned anatomy, it was very dry. I learned all the muscle insertions and the nerve innervation and where the organs were and all of that, but it was very dry, and it all stayed in my head. So when I discovered shortly after I graduated from massage college, experiential anatomy, I was so happy, because here was something that was juicy and that I could use with people to help them learn and transform their habits. So experiential anatomy is exactly that. It's bringing an experience of the different structures in your body, the bones, the organs, the fluids, your nervous system, any part of you can be explored with experiential anatomy. And what that is it's a non-intellectual way of experiencing your structure in a way that you sense it directly, and then you can use that sensation to change how you move, how you live in your body, how you breathe, how you perceive the world, because we know that when we approach through the physical, we can access our whole self. So with experiential anatomy, the idea is that the physical is the doorway through which we enter into our deeper self. Because every part of the body, every system has certain qualities and reflects certain human characteristics. So for example, bones are very linear, and organs are kind of soft and supportive and very emotional. So with experiential anatomy, we take intellectual information. So the first step of experiential anatomy is to learn something, to learn some intellectual information. But then we want to take that and into our body in a non-intellectual way. So there's this whole world inside of us that we can use to become more embodied. And because I love anatomy, this is the path that I have taken. So it can be very helpful to know what you look like inside, and it becomes then it becomes real. So most of us have never really had a sense of our knee joint or even our heel, but if we pay attention to it, then it becomes more real for the body, and the nervous system then recognizes, oh, I have a heel. So it's kind of like, this is what I think, that when a baby is born, one by one it discovers its thumb, and then its hand, and then it discovers its feet, and it puts its foot in its mouth, and it's so experiential anatomy is kind of like that. When we investigate or inquire into a certain part, it's like, here's your knee, sweetheart. Do you remember your knee? Oh yeah, okay. And now that you know your knee, you can use it to walk in an easier way, or you can use this knee to help you feel more grounded. So all of the pieces can become doorways, or what I call a touchstone. A touchstone, something that you keep in your pocket and you rub, and it brings you back to yourself. So if you like what I'm going to share with you about the lungs and the rib cage today, then when you need to feel yourself in a deeper way, you can go there because you've got that felt sense. And so that felt sense is developed by interoception. So interoception is a sensory awareness, or a felt sense of what's going on inside, either physiologically or anatomically. And so when we start to develop this skill, and some of us have more naturally than others, but when we develop this skill, then we get more of ourself back. We get more of ourself, and it's subtle, and it's it's slow. So for anyone who wants grand movements and great sensations, then experiential anatomy is probably not your path to embodiment. But if you are interested in slowing down and diving deeply and inquiring into one thing at a time, one structure at a time, then this may be interesting for you. And what's interesting about interoception is that it's processed in the same part of the brain that emotions are processed. So there's a part in the brain called the anterior insula. And so when we dive into this interoception, there's often some feeling associated with that. And then there's some kind of cognition. So this interoception, these interoceptive signals are processed in a different part of the brain. than other things, than a thought, for example, or a feeling, an emotion. So what happens is that we build a somatic memory. So the more you do something, the more you put your awareness in your lungs, in the lobes of your lungs as you're going through your day or in your practice, then the more that will be available to your nervous system in your regular breath and in your regular life. So the interoceptive inquiry brings, when we practice that, then it brings familiarity. And it also awakens the intelligence of all of those different parts right down to a cellular level, so that we become much more intelligent beings. And there's nothing wrong with that. So while we're doing these inquiries, we're discovering what is our habit? What's our habit in movement? What's our habit in breathing? What's our habit in how we stand or how we sit? And then we start to realize, oh, I can play with changing that habit because I've got some new information, and the brain is very excited because it gets new information. And then you can play with it and figure out, oh, well, this feels stronger, or this feels more integrated, or I feel happier when I do this. Yeah. So with experiential anatomy practices, you can reproduce a desired effect. So that's a good thing. We know what we do. We ask ourselves, how do I do that? And then we get a sense of that. Just one question. Am I talking too fast? Is it okay? Okay, good. All right. So as I've already said, that the physical body is a doorway to the other aspects of our being. So in yoga, we call those koshas. So a kosha is a layer of, or a density of consciousness. So the densest is the body. We have an energetic layer, we have an emotional layer, we have an intellectual layer, we have a spiritual layer. And in the yogic philosophy, all of those layers are covering the light of our inner soul. And so we want to polish and clarify and feed all of these different layers and know them, so that we can know who we are at our deepest self. Okay, so I know, and I want to clarify this, that when we focus on one structure, that that's not it. So when we take one structure, it's like in family therapy, you take one person out for a while, you work with them, then you put them back into the family, and all of the dynamics change. So that's kind of what experiential anatomy is like. It's a paradox, sort of, that we start with the body and we end up with more of our whole self. Okay, so we're always looking at the part in the context of the whole. We never want to forget that we are a whole person. So one of the things that I like to say over and over and over again is that awareness is awareness is awareness. So when we start with awareness in one place, be it physical or emotional or whatever, then it opens up more awareness in other areas as well. Okay, so I'm going to zip through these because I don't want to take up too much time. I have a clock here. Okay, So I've already talked a little bit about how experiential anatomy can bring us more embodiment. So I'm not going to say too much about that, except that it is a transformational process. So each part of the body has, like I say, some kind of aspect of being human. And so when we examine it, then we get to be more human. We get to go through a transformational process of knowing ourselves more deeply. And it's also a process of knowing how we are relating to our environment and the rest of the world. And my teacher, I've had the same movement teacher for over 30 years, and she's in her 80s now, and she's very wise. And one of the things that she says is that teaching people to be in their body is a radical political act, because when people are in their body, they cannot be controlled. So as we get more of ourselves, we can interact more skillfully in the outer world. Okay, I'll just say one sentence about safety, and that's that as we start to know our bodies and the structures in a different way, then we can understand the limitations, and we can sort of exploit the possibilities of our structure. And that can help us to stay safe. And by exploring in a very self-compassionate way, then that also builds a sense of safety. And then we can take all of this into the therapeutic realm, which is what I do as a yoga therapist. And so I use these tools and practices to repattern alignment, to repattern breath, movement, people's experience or perception of the world. And if I have a little saying, if you can feel it, you can heal it, but you have to feel it first. Yeah. Okay, could I have the next slide, please? So what experiential anatomy brings is a sense of greater embodiment. And these are some of the things that over the years of working with students, they have said these practices have brought them. And I just want to tell one little story here. I have a student who very, very tragically had a terrible, tragic experience where her son committed suicide in her presence. And she was obviously just devastated. And about 6 months after this happened, she found her way to our studio and started to come to classes. So she's now been a student for over a year. And just before I left, in the last class, she said that because we've covered a lot of different parts of the structure in that time, and she said that every part that we explore in class, she's felt like she got more of herself back from that experience. So that's what this work can do. It can bring a sense of compassionate presence. We befriend each part. And so even if somebody has what they would call a bad back or a bad knee, the practices that we do bring a sense of kindness and compassion for this part of us that is in so much pain or in so much need of nurturing. Yeah. Secondly, what this work does is it brings a sense of self-support and self-regulation. So you get to know, what do I need And how do I give that to myself through these practices that I've learned? And I've already said a lot about how these practices can help you to be more seated in your deeper self. Okay, good. So let us go to me, full me on the screen. How about that? Let's go into the practice. Okay. So I can't see myself very well, but I'll do the best that I can. Okay, so these practices today, I've chosen to work with the respiratory system. And if I was at home doing this, I would have my skeleton and I would have all my tools, and I don't have those. So you'll just have to remember the last time you saw an anatomy picture with the rib cage and the sternum and maybe the lungs and the spine and the back. So, but what we will do is we'll feel some of these structures. So the 3 steps of experiential anatomy are, first we learn something about it, and that's what we would do if I had my skeleton, but you just have to rely on your memory for this. The second step is to feel it, to develop that interoceptive awareness of the structure and how it moves and what are its qualities. And then thirdly, we integrate that new information into action, into movement. So if as a yoga therapist, I would take that into yoga poses. You might take it into the breath practices into a situation where you feel yourself becoming anxious or something like that, or you feel like you need to calm yourself down, or you need to ground yourself, or many possibilities. So the first step, well, we learn it and we feel it at the same time. So with breath, we have this container, which is the rib cage, we call it. I like to call it a rib basket so that it doesn't, it's not too restrictive. We've got the sternum in the front. So just one way to wake up your nervous system to the existence of a structure is to tap it. So if you could just tap first your sternum, so your breastbone, and get a sense of, oh, that's the top of it. Oh, there's the side. Oh, I can feel some ridges on it. Oh, there's the bottom of it at the solar plexus. And then take yourself now onto your clavicle, your collarbone. Just do, actually, let's do both sides. Yeah. And notice that your clavicles have a top, they have a bottom, they have a front. There's a big bump close to your sternum where the joint is. And then there's another bump out at the shoulder. So we don't think of the clavicles as participating in breath, but they do. Or the sternum. So the sternum rises up a little with an inhalation and then descends with the exhalation. Just a little, just a tiny bit. The clavicles, as that happens, as the sternum rises, it spreads the clavicles and they spiral and they extend out sideways a little bit. So just getting a sense for that as you take an inhalation, get a sense of the clavicles spreading and spiraling, spreading and spiraling, and then exhaling and they come back. And then start to tap the ribs now. And your ribs start way up here, just under the clavicle, and they go all around the back like a necklace. Yeah? So soft tapping, compassionate tapping on your sides. Yeah? Because you have 12 ribs. And maybe you could tap the bottom of the ribs in the front and then follow them around the sides to the back where they join the spine. And the spine moves with the breath too. As you inhale, the spine ripples and all of the ribs are supposed to hinge. But if there's tension back there, they won't. Yeah? So the more awareness we have, then the more breath capacity we have. Okay. So now let's get a little more specific with the ribs. So feel, if you take your hand, I think you can see me here. Take your hand just to the bottom of your rib in front. And feel for the bone of it. So the ribs, they aren't all at the same level, they go down and up. So see if you can feel one rib. So if these are my ribs, if you put your finger on one rib and then go back and forth and just feel the top and the bottom of the rib. Yeah? That's your rib. Yay! And there's spaces between your ribs, but follow that one rib as far as you can. Yeah, nice, easy. It'll take you around the side. And it'll take you around the back. And then when you get as far as you can go back there, then slip off of it and feel the space between that rib and the next rib. And then with that space, go like this with your finger because there's muscles in there and they might be a little bit tender. So be gentle. Yeah. There's muscles on the outside of the ribs and there's muscles on the inside of the ribs. So lots of possibility of tension in there. So when you massage just a little bit between the ribs in those spaces, then those muscles get the idea, oh, maybe I don't have to be so tense. Yeah? And do that with one more rib. So find a rib that's lower than that or a rib that's higher than that. And go back and forth and then follow it all the way around. And unless you have really long arms, you won't be able to get all the way to the spine. But once you get as far as you can go, then slip off of that and massage between that rib and the next rib. And you're just doing this on one side. Ooh, that's a sore spot. And then when you get back to the front, just let that be. And if it's okay, close your eyes and notice the difference between the side of the ribs that you palpated and the side and the other side. And get a sense of how you would describe that, maybe a word or two to describe the difference. So does somebody want to say something? What it feels like? Can we do that? Can somebody say something? Anyone?
Друзья, можно поднять руку или написать в чате, как вам удобно. Well, while people thinking, I will share that the side I was palpating feels like you know, bigger, yes, warmer, and then I'm kind of like a little bit go like this.
Yeah, you want to do the other side now. Anyone else? Okay.
There is a message in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
The ribs I
Or
massaged
alive.
feel alive. Yeah. And other sides like asleep. Emptiness on the side which was not touched. The intercostal muscles are relaxed. It is easier to take a breath. The diaphragm feels softer, more alive. So yeah,
Yes.
basically.
Yes, more alive. Yes. Hello, embodiment. Yay, already, just from touching yourself. Okay, so we probably don't have time to do everything on both sides, but I'd really like you to stay on the side you just did, and we'll do another practice, and then we'll do something on both sides. Okay, and it's always interesting to leave yourself a bit lopsided so that your body can figure out how to balance itself. Okay, so this second practice is taking a fold of skin. So we've got, I should say before this that we're working with the container, the bony container, but inside the bony container are the lungs, the contents, and they're have lots of blood and fluid, and they slide and they glide, and they have lots of weight. And so we want to be able to differentiate between the container and the contents, but they affect each other. So what we just did with the container affected the contents. Somebody said the breath was easier. Yeah, so the contents were affected. So when we do this next practice, we want to work with the lower part of the lungs, which is where we tend not to breathe so much. We tend to breathe more up here, but we want to get our breath down here. So what I'd like you to do, we'll do this in 3 places, is to take with your fingers like this, like a pincer, take a fold of skin and hold it away from the bone. Yeah? So even if you're really, really skinny, you still have a little fold there. So you gently hold the skin fold away from the ribs. And then you take an inhalation and you feel the ribs moving and filling that space. And then as you exhale longer, and you feel the ribs pulling away and making that space bigger. Yeah? Do that another 2 or 3 times. So inhaling, filling the space, and exhaling, pulling away from the skin fold. So the ribs are moving away from the skin. This is going to affect the fascia. Yeah? I feel my fat. You feel yourself, darling. Okay, when you've done it about 3, 4 times, then do the same thing on the side. So take another little, it just doesn't have to be much, just a little fold of skin, and pull it out to the side gently. And same thing, as you inhale now, inhale your ribs sideways towards your fingers. And then as you exhale, the ribs pull away back toward the midline. So you're waking up your brain to the existence of this possibility of more space. Yeah. Okay, then one more place, turn around, and at the back ribs, the lower back ribs, take a hold of a little bit of skin and pull that backward. Inhale into it. And then as you exhale, pull away from it. and then let that go. And if you feel okay with it, closing your eyes and tuning into the difference. What's the difference in sensation now? And maybe it's not just there. Maybe you can feel it in a different place. Okay, can we open up the chat again, or so that people can say what that, just another little practice, 2 minutes, that's all. What's the difference between the two sides? Warmer, good. Feel more movement, yeah. Feel more space, yeah. Feeling of freedom and volume, yes. Yes, good, good. So that's all it takes. You know, sometimes my students say to me, why, like, how come nobody's told me this before? Like, as a way to come back to yourself. Yeah, you just touch yourself. You just breathe into yourself. Yeah. Okay, so I've got 10 minutes, I think. And I'd like to show you my balloon lung. So I filled this balloon with water, half with water, and then I blew into it, so it's half air and half water. And that's kind of like your lungs, yeah? And although the water in your lungs is blood, but because of gravity, a lot of the blood vessels actually sink toward the bottom, which means that if we're breathing up here, we're not getting a whole lot of oxygen exchange. So what I'd like you to get a sense for, I know you can't feel this, but if you could imagine this balloon half full of water, it's got weight to it. It's got volume to it, yeah? And if I do this, it's like I'm pouring the water out the side, or I'm pouring it toward the front. I'm pouring it toward the back. And that's what our organs are like. They're full of blood, and they have weight, and they have volume, and they're all squished in there, which means that they're giving you support from the inside. And we don't think about that. It's kind of like a soft cloth gym bag that you would take to the fitness center. And if you stuff it full of clothing, then it has some stiffness to it. And that's the same thing. Our lungs are in there, our heart is in there, and then all below are all our digestive organs, and they're under a lot of pressure. So they create an inner support. And so what I'd like to do here, just very briefly, is for you to get a sense for this, to get a sense that your lungs have weight, they have volume, and they're full of fluid, and that if you just went like this, then all of that fluid would start pouring to the side, and that would take you into a little side bend, yeah? And then if you pour it back, then that would take you back up to neutral. So try that going both ways, getting a sense that you're moving from the weight, the volume, and the support of your lungs. And try forward and back. And then try any movement that feels interesting to you. So your lung, the fluid in your lungs is kind of sloshing around in there as you move. But you're moving from a different place than you would normally move. Okay, now let that come to a stop. I hope my balloon doesn't fall off and break. So just getting a sense now with your eyes closed, if that's comfortable, what is that? How is that different? What are the sensations of moving from that deep place of your lungs? And of course, your heart's in there too. So just for the sake of argument, just do those movements without the lungs. Like, how would you normally do that movement? Those movements you were doing. And how is that different? Yeah? Yeah. So you can feel the difference. Yeah, we're getting close to the end, so I don't want to listen to your wonderful comments, but I know you have them. Okay, so the lungs can then support the arms. So if you think of that volume of lungs, if you raise your arm up, can you get a sense that that arm just sort of sits on the support of the lung? So try that a few times, lowering your arm down and then raising it up, getting a sense of, oh, my arm can be supported by this internal structure. Good. Try it on both arms. And if you imagine that you're reaching for something, can you reach from your lungs? You're reaching for something in the cupboard. Can you involve more of you than you normally would? Can you involve the deeper you? Good. Okay. So this is just a tiny little taste, but I'm hoping that you can get a sense of the possibilities here. So I have just 2 minutes, right? Yeah, or maybe 3 minutes. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, could we go to the next slide, please? Yes. Okay. So this is a slide of a cross section about from right here. So somewhere I have. Anyways, you can see that it's shaped like a heart. So those are the lungs. The top of the heart is the back, is your back. That's the biggest part of the lungs. The heart is in the front, but the lungs surround the heart like a heart. Yeah? And so when you breathe in, you're not just expanding outwardly. Your lungs are also expanding inwardly and giving your heart an embrace. They're hugging your heart. So if you could take a moment with me here and close your eyes if that's comfortable, and get a sense of your sweet heart encircled by the lungs in 3 dimensions, front, back, side, bottom. And just for a few breaths, focus on the expansion of the lungs as you inhale. Outward expansion. And then turn your focus to what's happening on the inside of the lungs. So as you inhale, imagine the lungs expanding inwardly toward the heart and giving it a hug. And each inhalation is another hug. And notice the sensations of that. And maybe there's some feelings also associated with that. And then bring to mind that situation that you remembered at the beginning of this session, the one that you have some resistance to. And pull it up in front of you. And just notice, has your relationship to that changed at all? Have the practices that we've done any kind of transformation with your relationship with that situation, that piece of reality that you've been dealing with? And then just let that go. And I believe that we are at time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Leila, so much. This was so tender and powerful and really, really inspiring, all the same. And I will be this small information block, and then we'll come back to you for your top tip. Okay, so you have, 2 minutes to prepare. И, друзья, на этом заканчивается вот такая содержательная часть сессии Лейлы. Мы ждем вас на следующей сессии, которую проведет для нас Елена Блум. И эта сессия, сейчас, секундочку, я переключаюсь, движение Гурджиева, расширенное внимание. Это что-то очень тоже расширяющее диапазон тех практик, которые представлены здесь на конференции. И мы напоминаем, что запись этой сессии и всех остальных можно приобрести на сайте, а до 26 числа они будут в открытом доступе для всех зарегистрированных участников. Сейчас в чате появятся ссылки на сайт, а также ссылки на сайт Лейлы, Stuart, где можно больше и ближе познакомиться с тем, что она делает. Так, что еще искал? Ах, да. И, конечно же, часть доходов от продажи записей мы также разделяем с фондом «Такие дела», который поддерживает различные благотворительные проекты. Ну что ж, друзья, возвращаемся, чтобы узнать главную рекомендацию от Лейлы. So, we are back to you. Any, most wisdom?
Yeah, well, I would say that my best piece of wisdom would be go inside and become your own best friend. Yeah, and there's many pathways to that.
Wow, this is, I don't know how you do it, but this is like very structured and very, understandable on the mental level, but at the same time, so sweet and so lovely each time I hear you. So thank you very much. Here we finish our session.